Welcome to Box Free with Stephanie. Today I want to show you how to make some basic foods with simple ingredients from scratch. And I hope you can discover cooking from scratch is fun and simple and delicious. So today we are going to make pumpkin cheesecake because it's fall and everybody loves pumpkin everything, and cheesecake is like a double good thing. Pumpkin cheesecake. So let's just get started cooking together. Today the first thing we're going to do is make our crust. I don't really like a graham cracker crust on my cheesecake, so I usually always do a nut crust. So I have 1.5 cups of ground up nuts. This is pecans today because I'm using that with my caramel pumpkin pecan feel of the fall. So I'm just going to mix this up a little bit. It will get very much like sand, kind of granular. And then we're going to press it into our springform pan. If you don't have a springform pan, you can still make a cheesecake. I have a little, like, I don't know, 5-inch cast iron pan, and I make a little mini cheesecake in that, and that works out really nicely. The thing with the springform pan, all it really does for you is let you take the sides off and have these nice, tall, beautiful sides. So if you don't have a springform pan, you can still make it like in a pie pan or a round baking dish or whatever, and that's okay. All right, so this is what we're looking for, just this kind of granular nut mixture. Then we're gonna just dump this into our springform pan. And I don't put parchment paper on mine or anything. I just let the butter do its job. I did 1.5 cups of nuts and then 4 tablespoons of butter and a 1/4 cup of sugar. So that's what's in my nut crust. And you really just pat this out until it's all covered basically evenly. The other thing I don't do with my cheesecake is I don't build the wall up on the crust. I just don't really need all that crust up there. And I like to see the actual cheesecake on the side of my serving when I slice it up. So you can thin this out and make it go up the size if you want. You just press it until it's up as far as you want. I just personally don't do that. So this is all it takes, just a couple minutes to pat it out. And then all we're gonna do is pre-bake this. So you want to pre-bake your crust with the cheesecake because the butter and the sugar kind of melt together and get like crisp and nice and hard, so you have a decent crust on your cheesecake that doesn't get soggy when you're making your cheesecake. Okay, so that's what we're looking for, a nice uniform crust. We're gonna pop this in the oven for like 10 minutes. Okay, filling for cheesecake is usually, when you're making a real cheesecake, it's mostly just cream cheese and eggs. So today I'm going to make a two bars of cheesecake recipe. So I'm adding 2 room temperature 8-ounce bars of cream cheese. I always use the full fat, just regular cream cheese, not the Neufchâtel low fat cheese, cream cheese. You want that extra fat for flavor and for density kind of, so I always recommend that. So what we're gonna do, let me check my little recipe here, is just we're gonna paddle this until it's smooth, and then we're gonna add sugar and our spices. So I'm just using a handheld mixer. And this has been sitting out for about an hour or so, so it should be nice and soft. Okay, that's what you're looking for, just some nice whipped cream cheese. Then we're gonna add to it 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar, packed brown sugar. So there's 1/3. And I like the brown sugar with the pumpkin because it seems to give it just a little more of a caramel flavor. Like when you make a New York vanilla cheesecake, it just usually has white granulated sugar, but I like this for the pumpkin aspect of it, the caramely. Then we're gonna do 4 spices: cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and cloves. So we need half a teaspoon of cinnamon. That, okay, and then it just goes down the hatch. We need a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger. Whoopsie, not that much. Okay, whoopsie, getting a little bit messy. Okay, and then 1/8 of a teaspoon. I mean, 1/8 of a teaspoon is like the tiniest amount, but it really does matter. I mean, you want that flavor. Whoopsie, I've got a brand new nutmeg. Okay, so 1/8 of a teaspoon, just a teeny tiny little amount. And then the same with the cloves. I suppose you could use pumpkin pie spice mix. If you have pumpkin pie spice mix, then you would just add probably like 2 teaspoons of that. But I don't use that, so this is just the 4 spices you need. And then we need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. About like that. Okay. Now we're going to whip this together and then we're going to add our eggs. Okay, I'm going to scrape down my sides just a little bit here to make sure that I'm getting all my spices, especially since I kind of missed the bowl. So we'll finish that up. Our batter is all mixed up nicely. Now we're going to add the eggs one at a time. I'm not really sure why we have to add them one at a time, but it seems like all the cheesecake recipes I ever see say to do it just one at a time. And I think that's because you want to slowly incorporate it without too much air, but you want it nice and smooth. So we're just going to go one at a time. Blend that in. It doesn't take very long for the egg to get mixed into your cream cheese batter, so it's not a very slow process. It's just that you gotta just go through each egg. Okay, and now our 3rd egg. And these are just large eggs, so nothing too special. Okay. Okay, I'm going to scrape my bowl one more time. You really want to make sure with the cheesecake that all of your batter is nice and smooth, and so you don't want glops on the side of your bowl and then have that end up in your cheesecake. So we're going to just take a minute and do it one more time. Okay. Now we're almost done because the only thing we have left is our pumpkin. This is just canned pumpkin, and again, you do not want pumpkin pie mix because that has all the flavorings and I think some sugar in it. I'm not really sure, but you can also use your own pumpkin if you have little pumpkins, baking pumpkins. You just cut them in half, scoop out the seeds, put them upside down, cook them for like an hour at 350 until they're nice and soft. And the only difference with real, like homemade pumpkin is that it's more liquidy. So this is nice and dense and not very liquidy. So I don't have to strain it or anything, but if you make pumpkin from your own pumpkins from your garden or the farmer's market, then you just want to kind of squeeze it out with some paper towel or let it sit in a sieve or something and try to get extra moisture out. But I don't have that problem today because I'm using canned pumpkin. Partly because my friend gave me a real pumpkin to use, a fresh one, and then I cut into it and it wasn't quite ripe, so it didn't have the good pumpkin flavor. So I had to use my canned pumpkin, but that's okay. And then vanilla. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then this is basically your pumpkin cheesecake. Comes together pretty quickly. Oh, there's my crust. Okay, I'm going to pull that out of the oven because I don't want that to overbake. So you can see on my crust I have one little bubble kind of right there, and it just fell. As soon as I tapped this on my bowl, it fell nice and flat. So your crust won't look very much different than what you started with, but that's just fine. You don't really want it to be any browner or anything. You're just looking for that butter and sugar to work together. Okay, and now we're going to mix this up. I got a glop right there that I need to get blended in. But otherwise it's looking nice and smooth. It's really no big deal if you have gloppy stuff or, you know, it's not like perfectly smooth. All that will happen is you might have actually like a teeny tiny little piece of cream cheese when you take a bite. It won't be like perfectly smooth cream cheese, cheesecake. Okay. So cheesecake is that easy. So what I need to do now, because my crust is too hot, I'm gonna let that cool for about 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna pour in my crust, and we will bake this for about about 45 minutes or so. So we'll be right back. Okay, my crust has been cooling for a few minutes. I'm gonna just leave my beaters all messy like this. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm now gonna dump in my cheesecake filling into my crust. So cheesecake to me is a really beautiful dessert. Generally mine always turn out. I don't know. The only time they don't turn out, I think, is when I overbake it, and then it becomes a little bit granular and coarse feeling almost. It's not so nice and buttery smooth. So I think overbaking is the issue, and all you really want to do is bake it until the edges are set and you have a little jiggle in the middle. So we'll look for that. We're going to bake this at 350 for 40 minutes, and then we're going to check it. Now, I made this recipe with only 2 8-ounce bars of cream cheese, and that's because I'm just going to have my family eat this one. But when I'm making a cheesecake for like a holiday deal or a party, I usually do 4 bars of cheesecake, and I really like that because then it's really tall. This one will only be about 1 inch or 1.5 inches thick, and I really like how cheesecake is really nice and tall, but I just don't want that much cheesecake in my house today, so I did a smaller recipe with the 2 bars. Now once you pour your filling in, you can almost shake it out, shake it down. That kind of gets any air bubbles to come up so that you don't have an air bubble in your cheesecake. Looks like there's one right there that wants to come. Okay, and the other thing that I do is put my springform pan on another baking sheet because the butter in the crust always seems to leak out. Sometimes you can line your pan with tin foil, but that just seems like a mess to me, so I usually don't do that. And I just realized I never greased my springform pan, so we'll see how that turns out for me. I think I usually do that, but putting it on something is very important because then it keeps your oven nice and clean, and it does get a little bit seepy. So I'm going to pop this in the oven for 40 minutes, and then we'll come and check it in 40 minutes. My pumpkin cheesecake has been in the oven almost exactly 40 minutes. My timer's about to go off. I checked it 5 minutes ago to see how jiggly it was in the middle, and it was a little too soft. So I left it in there the full 40 minutes. I'm going to pull it out and show you what it looks like because I think now it is done. I'm going to turn off my timer. Okay. So my cheesecake is still jiggly in the middle, and that's okay. I'm gonna let it just stay like that. It's got some cracks in it, and that's okay too. A lot of times when you make a 4-bar cheesecake, I oftentimes gets cracks on the edges. That's okay with me, and I've got a couple air pockets there that didn't come out when I shook it or when I pounded it before I put it in the oven, but that's okay. So now, instead of letting this rest on the countertop, I'm gonna put it back in the oven, turn my oven off, and let it just sit in there for 30 minutes. So I'll turn that off, put this back in, but I'm going to leave my door ajar, and the purpose of that is you want your cheesecake to cool down slowly and then for a very long time. So I'm going to do 30 minutes with my door open and then 30 minutes on my countertop, and then I'll probably put it in the refrigerator for like 6 hours or maybe even overnight, and then we serve it after it's completely chilled for several hours, 6 to 8 or 12 or 14 or whatever. So we are going to come back in probably 6 hours after I have let it cool in the oven, then the countertop, and then the fridge, and then we'll serve it up. We're back after our cheesecake has been chilling for several hours. So I've left it on this baking pan because I just like to leave it in there until I'm all done. When I take it off, you can see there is a little bit of butter here that came out of my cheesecake, and that's okay. Before I release my springform pan, I'm going to take a very thin spatula and just go around the edges. You can see how it's already pulled away from the pan as it's cooling, but I want to just make sure that when I release my springform pan, nothing does stick to the side. So I'm going to do that. And you come around and you just pop it like this, slowly let it loose, and it comes clean like that. Now we have our cheesecake. So I have a crack here, which is interesting because when I pulled it out of the oven, I did not have a crack, but the cracks I had around the edge have all kind of gone back down and they've subsided to be fine. I don't really care that I have a crack in my cheesecake because I know it is going to taste delicious, and I will take the crack and have a homemade cheesecake because I think it looks gorgeous. This brown spot here, I'm not sure if that's just from the spices or what, but you want to go down when you cut, make sure you're cutting through your crust. You can feel it with your knife. Cut through your crust because you want to be able to get that also. And then grab your crust on the bottom here. There's your cheesecake. But I also made some caramel sauce because I think pecan crust with pumpkin cheesecake and caramel sauce on top is about as good as it can get. I do have a show called Homemade Caramel where I tell you how to make this caramel sauce, and I also make candied pecans on that show, which would also be really good on this. So I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of caramel over the top. And I'm going to call that my pumpkin cheesecake. So there is your fall festive dessert. And it should be very delicious. When you chill it overnight, make sure you take it out a good 20 or 30 minutes before you serve it because you don't want it to be so cold when you're serving cheesecake. You want it to be a little bit more like room temperature-ish, but it should be delicious. All right, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed Box Free with Stephanie, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. All right, thanks, bye.